Hey guys, I'm BSC1 again. This video is going to be a little bit different from my normal videos. I usually just do deck lists and gameplay and things like that. But this video is actually going to be just answering a question from my friend Nick. He asked me, how do players do well consistently, like Chase Maloney and Jason Klaczynski, and he said me as well. But he just wanted to know how the good players tend to do well at all the tournaments consistently when there is like luck and randomization and things like that involved in the game. So this video is kind of basically just going to answer that. So the first thing that, in my opinion, helps these players to do well so consistently is their deck choice and their deck list. So deck choice and deck list are kind of two different things, but at the same time they're kind of not, because when you choose your cards, you're choosing your deck and your list. So it's kind of the same thing. But anyway, these players typically are going to look at the metagame and predict what's going to be good. So a big part of deck choice, deck lists, and predicting the meta, a big part of deck list and deck choice is just predicting the meta. So these players a lot of the time aren't just going to play the same deck over and over. Although there are some players that have had success like that, like Israel Sosa tends to consistently do well with Yveltal, and there are some other players that did well like the whole season with different variants of Toad. So sometimes that is how it works. But even when they are playing the same deck the whole time, they tend to put in different texts and things like that to prepare themselves for the metagame. But in general, I think most of the good players, and including myself, we like to play a lot of different decks to counter different parts of the metagame and things like that. So the first and most important thing is just being able to predict the metagame well and figuring out what's going to be big and how to counter it well. There's a lot of cards that you can tech for certain matchups. Like you can tech, for example, a Raichu line to beat Yveltal, but you could instead tech a Lysander and maybe a fourth Verse Seeker, because that's going to help you against Lysander, that's going to help you against Yveltal more than a 1/1 Raichu line. So, like, knowing what cards to tech helps a lot as well. So you kind of just need to predict that and then counter it well. And that kind of brings me to my next point, which is the players' testing group. So usually, not all the time, but a lot of the times, good players have a group of people that are also good that they test with. There's teams, but sometimes people just kind of play with their friends and stuff like that, and their friends turn out to be really good too. Like a good example of that is Chase Maloney and Trevor Reed are both really good players, and they do well at tournaments consistently, but they're not like a team. And then like an example of a team could be like Team Honor Roll, I think is the one that Jacob Van Wagner's on, as well as Hovercats. Hovercats is a team too, and then there's X-Files, and then there's Team C. Those are like the main ones I can think of. So they're all those. Oh, and Mad Pulls is a team as well. So a lot of these good players are either in a big group or a team like that, or they just have really good friends that they can practice with. I know Dylan Bryan, for example, is a really good player, and he doesn't really have a team, but he just, as far as I know, he pretty much just works with some of his friends, and then his main testing partner is, what's his name? They're going to help you a lot in giving you a good idea of what's going to be played, how to tech in your deck well, and what decks to play and things like that. So teams and testing partners are really, really important in my opinion. But yeah, so a big part of it is just having a good testing group and a good amount of strong players to test with. And if you personally don't have access to like any good players or don't really have a testing circle you can communicate with, you can talk to me. Russell LaPere, that's his name. That's Dylan Bryan's playtesting partner guy. The next thing is practice. I know a lot of good players don't practice as much as they used to, but for every good player there's probably many, many, many hours that person has practiced. I myself practice far less than I used to, but when I was playing before, I would test like 6 hours a day or something like that. It was almost like a second job, aside from school, because I was in high school. But basically, you have to practice every day. Well, not every day, but a lot of time needs to be devoted into the game if you want to do well consistently. The next thing is like devotion, how much you really care about it. This kind of just envelops everything, but it's basically just your overall dedication to the game, how much you really want to try and put your heart into it and get as far as you can. For me personally, I care about this game way more than I should, and I think pretty much every high-level player is kind of in the same boat with me. We all really want to do well, and that's why we do well, is because that motivation really drives us to practice and do things like that. I know there are some good players that aren't really motivated anymore, but they're still good, so they just keep playing. But that's kind of a rare occasion. So, I mean, there's going to be exceptions to all of these things that I'm saying at some point with different players. But overall, these are just like the ideas that help most players to become good. This one's kind of short. It's just kind of a mindset. So just thinking logically. I know this seems pretty straightforward and simple, but most people actually don't really think very logically when they're deck building or choosing a deck. Basically, people tend to favor cards or decks even at times when they're not a good idea to use. So for example, someone, like for me, for example, I might play 2 Sick in a deck when it's a bad idea just because I know that it was very good for me in the past and I want to do it again, even though logically it may not be a good idea. So you have to kind of have the ability to ignore what you want to do and just do what you know you should be doing to prepare for the tournament, or well, should be playing, I guess I should say. So maybe I want to play 2 Sick, but I go down to 1 and put in a roller skates, even though I hate roller skates, just because it's a good idea. You have to be willing to accept new ideas and not get stuck in with the same old deck that you've been playing the whole time, or the same old spin on the deck that you've been playing the whole time. Another thing that makes a lot of good players really good is their creativity. I'll use Dylan Bryan as an example again. He's created like at least three different decks. I know he was like the first person to use Flareon at a big tournament. He played a variant of Mega Rayquaza at Worlds with all these different weird techs like Tropius and Terrakion. I want to say Dedenne, but maybe not. And I'm pretty sure he made something else too, but basically, a lot of the good players. Sorry, I was trying to earlier. And creativity kind of goes with the whole concept of being able to accept new ideas and try new things, because a lot of the time you're gonna have to try new stupid things that you think aren't gonna work out, but actually end up being really good. I think a lot of concepts probably didn't seem that viable and smart at first, but have actually worked out well in the past when people didn't expect them to. Another thing is not having a play style. So a lot of players are familiar with the concept of having like a play style, like just kind of the way you want to play a deck. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's important to get rid of that concept and not have a play style at all. If you're used to aggressive decks that do a lot of damage right off the bat, those aren't always going to be the best choice. I'm pretty sure that an aggro deck is not always going to win a tournament. It's not always going to be the best deck to play. So you have to be able to play all the different kinds of decks, like lock decks, aggressive decks, like setup decks, basically just any different variant. Obviously, not every deck is just categorized into one of these categories, but you kind of have to be able to think differently and modify your playstyle, or just not have a playstyle to the deck. So eliminating that idea of you needing to play this certain deck and only can play this kind of way is very important in being successful consistently. And then lastly, I think another big part of it is just having the transportation to go to tournaments. There are not all players, like Chase Maloney, for example, doesn't even go to very many tournaments. He doesn't even like hit LCs or anything like that. He just goes to big events and does well. But for the majority of us, including myself, we need to be able to go to a lot of tournaments to give us a lot of to give ourselves lots of opportunities to do well and place highly, because unless you're going to top the 4 regionals you're going to, and you're only going to 4, you're probably going to lose out on some points in some area, unless you're going to as many tournaments as you can. So it's a big financial investment. It's a lot of time too, but if you really want to, get good, you're probably going to have to invest a lot of time and money and things like that into going to tournaments. And it'll eventually pay you back if you do, become like a high-level player. At least in my experience, it definitely has. Now, because I can write articles, coach people, and I'm starting a website, as you probably know. So it will pay you back eventually if you do something with your knowledge, in my opinion. But it doesn't always. And I think that pretty much wraps up everything. I know there was like 7 points or something like that in there. I'm probably leaving some stuff out too, but I just kind of want to make this video to answer Nick's question, get back to him, and hopefully help you guys so that you can become a better player and maybe, you know, advance your skills. So I guess that's it for this video. Also, I'm offering coaching now. I have one, possibly two people that I'm going to be coaching. So I definitely have a schedule that can be open to more people if you guys want coaching. So you guys can always just send me a message on Facebook. I probably will leave a link to my Facebook in the description, but just in case I don't, it's Finnegan Lynch on Facebook, so you guys can send me a message, tell me if you want some coaching, and I guess that's it. Oh yeah, and the website, I'm still making the website. I actually have it up right now. It's launched, but you can't see it because it says the site is under construction, so, but I'm definitely making progress on it, totally working on it. I worked on it just today for like 4 hours, so we're slowly getting there, and I think that's it. Yeah. Comment if you want to tell me something, subscribe for more, and like if you liked the video. No, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing.